I have an 8-figure business. We're doing over $10 million in revenue, and I had 14 properties, filed bankruptcy in about 30 days. It was one of the most terrifying rides ever. I mean, God changed my life.
For the change makers of the world.
What's going on, guys? We are here at the Maximum Podcast, helping entrepreneurs reach their maximum potential. And today we have a special guest, Mr. Ken Joslin here. This is somebody that has done extraordinary things in business and in ministry. He's been able to plant multiple churches. He's been able to marry over 30 different couples. He's been able to do $350 million over in real estate transaction. He's built an 8-figure business in the mortgage world. And now he has the largest entrepreneur faith-based driven community in the world, with the biggest faith-based entrepreneur conference as well, connected to some of the world's greatest change makers. And today we're going to dive into his story. But before we do that, I just want to share how we even met, right? Because I think that's super special. Yeah. So basically, I was on a fast, a 40-day fast that God had put on my heart to do. And I was looking up at this fast and I'm like, God, how am I going to do this? And anyways, I was like, I'm just going to take the steps with you. And during this fast, I'm still working. We're still doing events. We're still working with clients. We go to, I think it was Tampa or Orlando?
Orlando.
So we're in Orlando. We're at the Patrick Bet-David Valuetainment Conference. We're shooting for one of our clients there. And then I'm on this fast. I'm like 20-something days in. I'm frail. I haven't eaten in days, but I'm like, Lord, just carry me through. I'm still working. I'm still traveling. And part of the reason I was there as well, one, to serve the client, but two, to network and get the opportunities. And so I remember I was in the car and I was taking naps in between like the sessions because I was that tired and drained. And I told God, I was like, God, my jaw hurts. I feel gross from fasting. I'm tired. I don't want to go talk to 1 million people. Just send me one person. And the Lord sent me Mr. Joslin here. And that's how we ended up connecting. And it was through our good friend, Troy Hoffman. And it was really special. And so I'm just grateful that we get to be here today, and that has manifested in this relationship has grown. Because I know one thing for a fact is that we are here on the same mission to do something so incredibly impactful beyond ourselves that is touching millions of lives right now, right here in this room. So I'm grateful, and I can't wait to dive into your story.
Yeah, so the last 25 years, I spent half of that in full-time vocational ministry, pastoring and planting churches. Part of that time, I built one of the largest youth ministries in the country around 96 to about 2001. Into real estate in 2001. Had my own mortgage brokerage, became one of the top mortgage brokers in the state. So half of that full-time vocational ministry, the other half of that in real estate. Closed about 350 million in real estate transactions as a top producing mortgage broker, and then a real estate agent. Still have my license. I have a team with EXP. I don't really do any of that. I just focus on what we're doing inside of GSD. And in 2019, finished 7th out of 3,725 agents in one of the top producing mortgage or real estate companies in the state of Georgia.
In 2019?
2019.
Wow, so you did real estate for majority of your career.
Yeah, really about half and half over the past 25 years, but really have done a lot of real estate pretty much for the last 25 years.
Amazing. So from early on, what kind of got you in the church? What kind of, led you to, having this call on your life and, acting in obedience and serving the kingdom?
So I didn't grow up in church. Probably went to church maybe a half a dozen times my entire life. I was 25 years old. I'd just gotten married to my first wife. We were married for 27 years. We got 4 amazing daughters, amazing son-in-law, and 1 ridiculously gorgeous granddaughter.
Oh, yeah.
And
he's a grandpa, everybody, but he doesn't look like it, though.
I'm Papa. Thank you very much, Papa. And my next door neighbor, right after I first got married, was the youth pastor at a little Southern Baptist church here in the North Atlanta area, and kept inviting me to church. And then I had another guy I played softball every weekend, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday, men's league, all the stuff. And one of my buddies, Jason, who they actually went to the same church, kept inviting me. And August the 8th of 1993, I make my way into this Southern Baptist church, and 2 weeks later, gave my life to Christ. Had that 2 Corinthians 5:17. Therefore, if any man's in Christ, he's a new creation. Old things have passed away. Behold, all things have become new. That conversion experience, God radically transformed my life. And that was kind of the beginning that was 31, 32 years ago. That was kind of the beginning of my faith journey. I didn't know anything about God. Like literally, I was one of those guys at 25 years old that sat in church and the pastor said, open your Bible to the book of Matthew. I had to look in the front to see where Matthew was because I had no idea. Oh, Matthew, first book in the New Testament, first book of the 4 Gospels. I had no idea. And so, yeah, that was me at 25 years old, but I just had a radical conversion experience. I mean, God changed my life.
Let's talk about that. Like, what really was like changed in your life before, you really were walking with God versus like afterwards?
Yeah, so I was born in Detroit, raised in Pontiac, go Blue, big Michigan fan. And my parents got divorced when I was 8 years old. So mom moved us from Pontiac to the Atlanta area in Gainesville. And that was in the 2nd grade. From my 6th grade year to my senior year of high school, I moved back and forth to my dad's 6 different times. I went to 12 schools in 12 years in 6 different high schools. And so, I mean, I grew up in the, in Pontiac in the hood. I mean, it wasn't a great neighborhood. It was kind of rough. My dad worked at General Motors. My dad worked 2nd shift. So a lot of times when I would move back to my dad's between my 6th grade and my senior year of high school, I would either live with my aunt and uncle and I was kind of on my own, or I lived with my dad. He worked swing shift at General Motors 3 to 11. So I'd come home from school. It's just me. I kind of raised myself. And so I'll never forget, I gave my life to Christ August 22nd, 1993. I got baptized the next weekend, the 29th. And then the next weekend, the pastor said, hey, I want you to come play basketball at my house next Sunday after church. I'm like, man, that'd be awesome, because I was a big hooper, played in the Air Force, played some college basketball, loved the game, played until about 3 or 4 years ago, several days a week, and in a pretty good men's league. And so pastor asked me to come over, and I remember I was talking to my wife, and I said, oh my gosh, if I go over there, like this is because my language was terrible. It was GD, MF, I mean, I just would fight. I mean, that's what I grew up in, in Pontiac. And I'll never forget, we got through a church that day, went to play basketball at my pastor's house, and I came home, and Christy was like, how did it go? And I said, it went great, man. We had a great time, bunch of guys over there. She goes, well, did you get angry? Did you try to cut? Because we cussed and fight. That's what we did in Pontiac, Michigan, playing basketball in Detroit. And I never forget that moment I had. I was like, no, as a matter of fact, I don't think I've said a cuss word in 2 weeks. Like when you talk about 2 Corinthians 5:17, if any man's in Christ, he's a new creation. It was gone. I didn't work on it. I didn't think about it. It was just gone. God took it immediately from me. So that was one of the first moments in my walk with Jesus where I knew, dude, God, I am a different man. Like, man, the Holy Spirit lives on the inside of me. I'm a different human being than I was 2 weeks before.
Nice. And so what really made you want to go and like do the work for the kingdom? Obviously you had this transformation, right? But what was it where it's like, I'm going to serve the ministry and I'm going to go out there and create one of the largest youth ministries and events.
That definitely wasn't it. Like when I got saved, it was like I was all in with Jesus. Like, man, you've changed my life. All my friends' relationships were circled around Christ. And I remember I got saved August 22nd of 1993. October the 3rd on a Sunday night. Southern Baptist Church back in the day. We went to church on Sunday night, Wednesday night, and I'll never forget the pastor going, hey, we would love for you to share your testimony in front of our entire church on Sunday night. And I'm like, okay. And so October the 3rd, I got up, I shared my story.
And you're like 17 at this time.
No, I was 25, right? 25 years old. I'd been married for 1 year, and I had a terrible temper, before I gave my life to Christ. And it took me some years to kind of get that under control. But I never forget, I shared my testimony that night, and man, several people gave their lives to Christ. I had so many friends, family members, sister-in-law, brother-in-law. All these people were giving their lives to Christ because they saw what happened to me, and they were like, if God can change this guy's life, number one, he can change anyone's life. And number two, God has to be real, because the change and transformation for me, not only was it instant, and obviously it's been over a period of years, but there was a massive change instantly. And so we did a Halloween outreach at the church called Judgment House, where we literally had all of these scenes. We'd walk people through for about an hour and a half through all these different drama scenes. They literally would take this whole Sunday school wing and they would tear out rooms and turn them into bar scenes and turn them into living room scenes. And so, we had hundreds and really thousands of people that went through that over the 2 or 3 week period. Well, I'm downstairs in the counseling session. They'd run through the heaven scene, the hell scene, or hell scene, heaven scene. They'd come in there. We'd share the gospel with them. So I'm leading people to Jesus 3 months after I got saved.
Wow.
And that's when they were like, wow, okay, this guy's like, God's really done something in this guy's life. And the opportunity I had right after that was, hey, we'd love for you to take over this Sunday school class of high school students. There's like less than 10. And so I took that high school Sunday school class. We grew that to about 40 or 50 kids, like literally in a span of just a few months. And then a few months later, I really felt like God was calling me to preach. Like, I'm like, okay, God, this is something different. I'll never forget this. I was studying for my Sunday school class message, and we were at prayer. We had prayer every Saturday night at 10 o'clock, and there'd be 20, 30, 40 men and women that would gather at our church and pray. And we were seeing so many people give their life to Christ. And I mean, like, massive conversion experiences. A lot of people that I'd known my entire life, man, were coming to the faith for the first time in their lives, and they were experiencing the same thing that I experienced. And remember, we were at prayer on Saturday night. This would have been in the spring of 1994. I'd only been saved about 6 months, and we're praying that Saturday night. And I remember my pastor said, "Hey guys, Ken really needs to hear from God on something. And if you guys would pray for him, that God would really speak to him, that would just be amazing." And so I remember we were at the back of the church building, and I remember we were done. It's, we'd pray from 10 to about midnight every Saturday night for the following day. Mm-hmm. And as I'm walking away, I feel this hand grab me from behind, and it was cold. It was like a cold hand. And I turned around, and it was a guy in our church named Ernie. He was about 82 years old. He was an older guy. So his hands are all wrinkled. It was cold. I'll never forget when he got me, how cold it was.
Wow.
And he grabbed my hand, and I turned around. I'm 25 years old. And I turned around, and he said, "Ken, God told me to tell you that he's going to speak to you in a small, still voice." And I'm like, okay. So we left Saturday, church on Sunday. I go home Sunday afternoon. I'm studying for my Sunday school class. And I'm in the book of Kings, where it talks about Elijah and Elisha. And Elijah ran from God, or ran from Jezebel, and he was hiding in a cave. And I'm reading the scripture where it says God came to him in the earthquake. He didn't hear him. Came to him in the wind. All these different ways he didn't hear God. And then it said, and then God spoke to him in a small, still voice. And I knew, okay, God, you're calling me into the ministry. This is what you're calling me to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, he's an incredible storyteller, because I'm visualizing this, and I'm like in the moment, the details of it all, and that's super powerful. Yeah. And so from there, how long were you in ministry, and because you had quite a run, a large run. God has used you in a major way. So let's talk about kind of what you've been able to accomplish in ministry. Yeah,
that was in '94, and a couple years later, we started a new church in town, and that was kind of the start of my church planning experience. And so we started a new church, and I said, "Hey, you're going to be the youth pastor." And I had no idea about youth ministry other than what I'd done in the Sunday school class. They'd saw me grow that. And so I started with really no clue as to what youth ministry was supposed to look like. I was drowning because I didn't know what to do. I just knew youth ministry was probably the worst youth ministry in America. It was terrible. And we had, a dozen kids, that were there, and I'm just trying to keep them occupied every Wednesday night. And from that point is when I got connected with one of my first mentors, who held an event called Acquire the Fire, which was this massive event. They did about 18 or 19 locations around the country, about 12,000 to 18,000 students and youth pastors, senior pastors, and leaders at all of these events. So these big not stadium, but 18,000 events. And so we're at this event, and I'm watching. I never forget. I'm sitting back and I'm watching this massive event, and I'm seeing the lights and the smoke and the hazers and the worship, and my kids are actually worshiping, and I'm like, holy cow, that kids actually want to worship. And I'll never forget. I'm sitting there in the atmosphere, and God said, I want you to do this in your youth ministry. I want you to create this type of atmosphere on your Wednesday nights. I want you to change what you're doing right now and make it look like this. So kids, number one, and I heard Willie George, who pastors one of the largest churches in America, had the largest youth ministry in America at the time. This was like in 1997. And I heard him say one time, he said, kids aren't ashamed of God. Teenagers aren't ashamed of God. They're just ashamed of their youth groups. And I was like, wow, like I got it, because it was like a light bulb.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sitting at this event, and I said, I'm Adam, it was a college age guy who was leading worship with acoustic guitar for me. And I'm like, what is that light? Why is that moving? Why is it hazy and smoky in there? I had no idea. And so Adam's writing all this stuff down in his notebook. And I said, well, how much does all that cost? It was like 10 grand. And I'll never forget, God said, I'm going to raise that $10,000. I'm going to use you to raise it. Half of that's going to come from your students, and half of that's going to come for the community. And I'm like, God, I'm broke. Like, my kids are broke. I got like 12 kids. Where are we going to get $5 grand from our kids? And so that was the one session. Well, the next day we go into a leadership workshop with Ron Luce, who became one of my mentors and friends. That was 28 years ago. He's still one of my friends. And I walk into this workshop, leadership, and Ron teaches on mission statement, core values, and BAGs. And I'm sitting in this workshop with 600 or 700 other youth pastors and youth leaders and senior pastors. And I'm sitting there, and Ron's teaching on mission statement. And I just had this big at-a-glance calendar, and I'm just writing these things down. And Ron said, okay, if you don't have a mission statement, I want you to create one. So I picked my pen up, and when we talk about vision, writing vision down, the power, really the supernatural power that's behind that. I started writing down, and within 30 seconds, 45 seconds, God gave me this mission statement. Worship, change, teach the authority and truths of God's word with a resulting vision that creates an army of young people to make a worldwide difference for the kingdom of God.
Sheesh.
That was 27 years ago, and I can quote it just like that today because God breathed that in my spirit. I'll never forget, I wrote that down. Ron taught on core values. I started writing down our core values for our youth ministry. Ron taught on BHAGs, big, hairy, audacious goals, which is what they teach at Harvard Business School. I wrote down in the back of that at-a-glance calendar, I wrote down 3 years of vision. Here's what our youth ministry is going to look like. Here's the number of kids we're going to have. Here's what our youth facility looks like. Here's what my team looks like. Like, I literally just wrote that down. Over the next 3 years, everything I wrote down came to pass with the exception of just one thing. I came home. I'll never forget, I came home that weekend. Dude, I'm so full of vision. I'm so fired up. I called my pastor on the phone Saturday. I said, Pastor, listen, I said, I need some money. Here's the vision God's given me. Here's what we're going to do. And this is going to be massive. It's going to change our city. It's going to change the state of Georgia. And I said, I need X amount of dollars. And he goes, dude, we don't have any money. I said, no, you don't understand, dude. I've got this massive vision. I don't need a ton of money. I just need this. Because we were meeting in this fellowship hall behind this older building. It was our first church our first campus this church was in. And it was a fellowship hall with 2 rooms off to the side. We used them as Sunday school rooms. I called the church that actually owned the building. I said, hey, can I knock these walls out so I have just one massive room? They're sure. And so I started looking with my team. I'm like, how much would it cost us to paint it? We had like Amy Grant and DC Talk posters on the wall. It was the worst youth ministry ever. And we go in and we painted the room. We had par cans up. We didn't even have enough money to buy a light board. One of my keyboard player was an electrician, and he literally took the light switches, the ones you slide up and down, put them all in a row, and we had a 2x4 that my team would just slide the lights up and down. Had a full band when they came in. The room was different, and God moved in an amazing way. And I said, in 6 months, we're going to take up an offering from you guys, and we're going to raise $5,000 in here, and we're going to raise $5,000 outside. And in 6 months, not only do we raise $10,000, but we raised over $75,000.
Wow.
We had just bought an Ingalls building and a shopping center, kind of a L-shaped. And they were going to give me 2,400 square feet. They wound up giving me 7,200 square feet. We went from 12 to 15 kids to about 150 to 200 in about a year and a half. It just exploded. And we moved into the new facility. I raised all that money. We built out one of the top youth facilities. I had a 50s diner. I had an outdoor basketball court. We had a full cafe, kitchen, PlayStation 2s, pool table, like all this stuff. And this was in 1999, before anybody had anything like we did. And I just saw God do some amazing, amazing things in that time period.
Wow. Yeah. That's profound. And so from there, I know you started to go even bigger than that, correct?
Yeah, we grew that youth ministry. We'd have, we did big events. We'd have 400 or 500 kids show up. We saw hundreds of kids give their lives to Christ, and that was kind of the beginning for me in that full-time vocational ministry role.
Nice.
Yeah.
How did that make you feel during that time? When all this is happening, you're seeing the love on the children's faces, you're seeing them being developed and them come to Christ. Like, how did that make you feel?
Yeah, it's fulfilling, right? You're seeing the vision that God gave you, that at Acquire the Fire, I started writing down 3 years of vision. You're seeing those things actually come to pass. It was the first time in my life where I had this, man, God, you really do want, vision is powerful.
Yeah.
Proverbs 29:18 says, where there's no vision, people perish. And I always, people hear that scripture, I always flip it around. Well, where there's no vision, people perish, but where there is vision, godly vision, people can flourish. And what I saw was people flourishing.
Wow.
What I saw was life change coming from that.
Yeah.
And then what I learned in that session with Ron from this at-a-glance calendar was the principles of Habakkuk 2. Write the vision down and make it plain, that the herald who reads it can run with it. And it literally, everything we wrote down came to pass.
I always had a question about that verse, because it's like, make it plain, right?
Yeah.
But when you write these visions down and you plan your goals, it's very like detailed oriented, everything like that, right? So how do you kind of decipher that verse, and how do you versus how you create your goals? Right?
I can just tell you how I did it, and how I do it today was I just started writing down what I thought it was going to look like. And
wouldn't that require a lot of detail?
Yeah, hey, we're going to have a facility that we're going to have one of the top facilities in the nation. A top facility. I'm going to have an auditorium that seats 250 to 300 students.
You're specific.
I'm going to have it was a 50s diner. It literally looked like you walked back into the 50s and went into Happy Days set on TV.
Wow.
I had a 57 Chevy in neon on the wall, and our booths were like red metal flake. We had milkshakes. It literally looked like you walked into a 50s diner in 1999. It was something nobody was doing. It was a really cool place. Again, teenagers aren't ashamed of God. They're just ashamed of their youth ministry. Mm-hmm. And what we did was we made it in our city where teenagers were like, listen, the coolest place to be is at Crossfire.
Wow.
And so we had kids, we were bussing kids in. I had a girl, Dia, I just sent her a message last week on literally 3 days ago, on Instagram, just to let her know how much I love her. She was in the 9th grade, and dude, she would bring 15 to 20 kids every Wednesday night. And all of her friends were giving their lives to Christ. And we just created this atmosphere that teenagers loved. And from that standpoint, my relationship with the different mentors that I had, like Ron, like Jeannie Mayo. Now I'm speaking on their stages. I'm sharing leadership principles. I did my own National Youth Leadership Conference called Create, which is where we get the name for our conference that we do now, called Create. And that was the very first time in my life where I started to understand the power of vision. And really Scripture is clear. It's clear. It's easy. Jesus talked about, if you come to me, you have to come to me like a child. It's childlike faith. Why? Because it's simple to understand. It's not complex. Scripture is not complex. It's write the vision down. Okay, God, what do you have for me? And then get still before God, and then let God speak into your heart and start writing down what it is that God has for you.
That's beautiful. Wow. Well, so from there, You had the youth ministry. How did you end up segueing into like entrepreneurship? Obviously, you were probably still doing real estate at this time.
So from there, I met a buddy of mine who played he was a big time basketball player in Detroit, played on the #1 AAU team in the nation with Chris Webber and Jalen Rose and all the guys, and met Chad. Chad and I stopped doing youth ministry and I started traveling with him, and we did motivational high school assemblies. So we spoke to about 330,000 kids the first year. So we were traveling all through school year, and we would go into churches on Sunday and speak, and then we do high school assemblies on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at different schools all in the area. And then we'd host rallies on Wednesday night, and we had some rallies we had 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 kids show up.
Wow.
It was unbelievable. We were giving away cars, we were giving away PlayStation 2s, all these sponsors that we had. Dude, we were seeing about 60 to 70% of the kids we spoke to in schools were showing up to our things on Wednesday night. And then out of that, we're seeing a vast number of these kids give their lives to Christ. So I did that for a year. I was gone literally Saturday afternoon all the way through Thursday morning. And after about a year, I had a 2-year-old and a 4 or 5-year-old. And my wife was like, you ain't traveling like this anymore. And so we actually were here back in Georgia, and I went to my best friend who was a mortgage broker. And I said, dude, I need a job. And Chris handed me keys to a Lexus, handed me my first manila legal folder. He goes, here's your first mortgage deal, and there's your office. Go figure it out. And I walked in, I closed that first deal. I think I made about $5,000, $5,000 or $6,000, which $5,000 or $6,000 from somebody in ministry was unbelievable, because I'd been making about $55,000, $60,000 a year. And so here I walk into Chris's arena, never done mortgages. I had no idea what a 1003 from a 1090, I didn't know anything about mortgages. And I was his #1 loan officer the very first year. I made $146,000 the first year I worked for Chris. And that's where oh my goodness, like vision works in ministry, in business, just like it does in ministry. And that was my first kind of taste. And then 2.5 years later, I started my own mortgage company.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's huge. So why did he give you the Lexus?
It was his grandmother drove it. She had just passed away. And
so he just wanted to see
it was
you
literally
succeed.
Yeah. So his grandmother Lois C. and mom raised me and him as my mom raised us as well. We were at one of the 2 houses all the time growing up. Yeah, he's like, Lois C. had just passed away, and he's like, it was like a 1993 Lexus Gold LS 400.
Nice.
And he's like, dude, here's a car, because I needed a car. He was like, we had one, we didn't have 2, and he's like, dude, here, take this car.
That's a solid guy.
That was good, dude.
Yeah, wow. So that started it. You went through your real estate career. You were you opened up the brokerage.
Yeah.
Right, and then where did that go from there?
Yeah, so opened up the brokerage in 2007. I was already, man, we were killing it. I had some incredible LOs. We were closing probably about 25, 30 deals a month. And I was closing probably 15 of those. And so all my money was 100%. So, I mean, I was making some months upwards of 75, 80 grand a month. So we were doing really well. I hired the #1 originator with SunTrust in the Southeast. She was closing about 22 deals a month on her own. I hired her I believe it was July the 7th of 2007 in Columbus. So now I have an office in Gainesville, Georgia, and then I've got an office in Columbus. So I hired Kim. We go down there, we open that office that first week of July of 07. We opened that office, we did a massive grand opening, Chamber of Commerce, ribbon cutting, front page of the paper, 125 agents show up. And dude, I'm about to blow the business up. And that night, everybody leaves, we get the office clean. I had invested a ton of money in opening that office. And I'm sitting at my desk, and dude, I'm bawling. And I'm like, God, this isn't what you want me to do. And I knew God was calling me back into ministry. I didn't know what it looked like, but I just knew there was that internal pull and call. And I knew this wasn't what I was supposed to do, even though I was absolutely killing it in business. And so September, about 2 months later, September the 30th of 2007 is when Fannie Mae did, because that was when the housing market crashed. They did their first round of guideline changes, which took about 35% of our business away overnight. Like it was, you got an email at 4:00 on the afternoon, said, here's the My Community programs that are going away, and these programs are going away. If you don't have your loan closed and funded by 5:00 today, your loan's no longer eligible. Oh, wow. Dude, it was holy cow kind of moment. And so that happened. And then again in January of 2008, January 31st of 2008, same thing happened again. So that took about 70% of our business away, just like that. And so I'm sitting there in February of 2008. I had 11 loans on my desk. They were all my personal deals. Weren't anybody else's deals. These are mine. I would have made about $55,000 to $60,000 personally that month off of those 11 deals. I closed 0 of them. I couldn't get any of them closed. Appraisals wouldn't come back. And I mean, I got guys with 800 credit scores, high 700 credit scores that were just doing rate and term refis. I couldn't get them closed because there were so many, the foreclosures were starting to rack up. So all these distressed property sales and value were bringing the value down of everybody's home. Yep. So I couldn't get any deals done. That's when I realized, holy cow, God, this whole thing's about to crash. And it did. I mean, literally within the next couple months is when the recession hit. 07, the beginning of 2008, and at the time I had 14 homes.
Yeah, I remember you telling
14
me.
homes. I mean, I had a lot of money. I mean, we were doing great. I literally went from making $60,000 to $80,000 a month to no $1,000 a month in about 30 days. It was one of the most unbelievable, terrifying rides ever. And that's when I was like, okay, God, when you spoke to me back in July, when I opened this office in Columbus, this is why you spoke to me. And so I knew that God was already directing me to go back into full-time ministry. And we did. We worked through a church planting organization called ARC out of Birmingham, Alabama, in Church of the Highlands, and planted a church and started that journey in 2008. And then August 22nd, 2010, we planted our first church. Me and my wife and 2 other couples, and over the period of 7 years grew that to several hundred people as well.
That's beautiful. I want to touch upon just what you said about right where that crash was hit. Kind of want to expand that for a second.
Yeah.
So there you are making probably your first million or a couple millions.
I was worth almost $2 million. My personal financial statement was like $1.9 million. I had 14 properties, equity in all those properties. I mean, about $240,000 in a money market account, $100,000 in my checking account. I mean, we were killing it, dude.
How old were you at that time?
That was in 2007, so 20 years ago, so 38, 39.
39. Oh, yeah. So you're there.
I have an 8-figure business. We're doing over $10 million in revenue a year. I mean,
wow.
Literally in 3 years, we were absolutely killing it, and then the housing market comes.
So you're there at the top, and you're feeling good. You're feeling good, and then, all of a sudden, everything comes crumbling from underneath you.
Yeah. And here's the thing I'll say to you. At our conference every year, and in our masterminds that we do now, we do in our core 5 framework, faith, health, relationship, business, and finances, we always do 46:10 moments. And that comes from Psalms 46:10. Mm-hmm. Be still and know that I'm God. As entrepreneurs, we don't know how to be still. Mm-hmm. All we literally do as entrepreneurs is go, 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 grind, work, work, work. And then we expect God to honor what we're doing. And He does honor work and He does honor action. But the first thing He wants us to do is be still. Mm-hmm. And so the moment that I got still in the first week in July of 07, after my grand opening night, was when I heard God. I knew. I'm like, oh my God, this isn't what I'm supposed to be doing. I knew 7-8 months earlier from what God had placed on my heart and spoke to me that I wasn't going to be doing this long. I had no idea the housing market was going to crash.
Yeah,
but I knew something was up.
Got it. So, having that level of success and losing it, what did you feel? Did you feel like a failure? Or were you depressed?
I never had. The hard part about that was because I filed bankruptcy in May of 2008 on about $2.8 million because I had 14 homes.
Yeah.
And some of my homes were $500,000, $300,000 or $400,000.
Yeah,
and I had.
That's a hard thing to when you're like, this is the path of wealth, and I'm building my wealth, and then it's just like. In a moment, right?
But anybody that was in real estate back then, mortgage brokers, mortgage guys, real estate people, everybody got hammered.
Annihilated.
And so it was like all the brokers that I knew, my best friend stopped me. He didn't lose his broker's license, he just turned it in because it didn't mean anything, because you couldn't do a mortgage. I mean, unless you were doing new construction, and there weren't very many people buying new homes because the market had completely crashed. And so it was I never struggled with, this is my fault, I could have done it different, because we did it well. I mean, I had a legit 8-figure business, 13, 14 loan officers. We were doing really, really well. And that part of it was great. So I never struggled with that. It was just, listen, here's what the market is. Here's what the market dictates. And this is part of it. And it was just one of those things. So I didn't struggle with, man, I messed up. Because I like to spend money. I had nice stuff, a nice home. We took all my pastor friends, I took them on fishing trips to the Keys. My other pastor friends took them to Disney. Every year, because I knew what it was like to be a pastor. Like, man, I was making $55,000 with a wife and 3 kids. Like, I don't have money to go to Disney.
And you're just trying to follow the Lord.
Dude, I took some of my friends. I never forget, we were in Orlando. We went to Charlie's. It's like one of the top steakhouses in America. I took like 4 couples, and my kids and their kids. It was like $1,000 for dinner. And I took everybody out to dinner, and I took care of the whole tab. Like, I never had a problem doing that, because they're in ministry. They're never going to have an experience like this. I'd love to be able to take them.
Yeah.
And so I never struggled with guilt, or I'm like, okay, God, what do you have next?
Wow.
I just seen God's faithfulness. Psalms 105:5 says, the works of the Lord are to be remembered by his people. And so when you look back at the timeline in your life, came to Christ, and here's the timeline leading up to the moment that we're in now, you just see God's faithfulness. And I'm like, okay, God, I don't understand all this. I don't know why it's happening. We got to a point one time, filed bankruptcy, renting a house. I was getting ready to plant a church, and I pulled in the driveway one night. And I'm getting ready to pull in the driveway. And I'm like, God, I've got to have $160 today by tomorrow morning, or they're going to cut my power off. Like, that's legit. Like, and I mean, we walked out of having more money than we really knew what to do with to that. I pull in my driveway, and I get a phone call, and it's a friend of mine that goes, hey, God told me to give you $200. Can you drive over here and pick it up right now? And I'm like, I will be there in 15 minutes. Literally walked inside. Hey, babe, so-and-so just called me. They called me and said, hey, listen, God told me to give you this. I said, I'm going to drive over there. We can pay our electric bill. Like, it was that. It was when you see God move in those moments, you just trust him. You're like, okay, God, I don't understand why we're going through what we're going through. Romans 8:28 says, all things work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose. All things. Great things, awesome things, fun things, sucky things, can't pay my electric bill things. God, I stewarded this well. I've got all this money. I've got all these properties, literally almost $2 million in net worth. And then literally within a span of just a few months, it's gone. Okay, God, I don't get it, but I know you do. And I know none of this takes you by surprise.
Yeah. How can people trust in the Lord more? Especially when you go through something like that, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you increase your trust and your faith to know that he will provide for you and he'll get you through?
So we're watching the college football playoffs. Yeah. So Alabama and Indiana are downstairs playing. What do those college football players do in the summertime?
They have off season?
Workouts. They're in the gym. What are they doing in the gym?
Preparing.
They're busting that tail, man.
Yeah.
And how do they get stronger?
Work out.
Lifting weights. Heavier weights, heavier reps, resistance. Like, all of those things make them stronger. And it's God going, you know what, I need you to be stronger, because what I've called you to do is greater than what you can do right now. And you walk through those moments in life, and it doesn't make sense, and it can be painful, and you can question, but it's like, okay, God, I don't know why I'm going through. Even if you did make a mistake, let's say even in my mortgage days, I did blow all my money, and I did have a lot of debt. Still, the reality of it is, it can be your fault. It can be God just taking you through something. It can be somebody else's fault. Let's say a business partner, a business deal goes bad, and they steal or rob from you. It doesn't matter what that looks like. It's, okay, God, your word says in Romans 8:28, all things work together for the good. All things. Not just this, not just the great things, the moments I enjoy, but the moments I'm like, God, where are you? God, why are you letting me go through this? Why are you letting my family go through these moments? All things work together for the good. And I think the more times you go through those, the stronger it makes you, because the great times don't make you stronger.
Yeah.
The great times make you complacent, but the hard times are what makes you stronger, and it makes you enjoy. When God gives you those moments, you enjoy them that much more. Yeah.
He's got the meat. He's giving us the meat right now, the meat and potatoes and the gravy, and I love it. So fast forward to, you planted the 2 churches. Obviously, you had the whole recession, lost a lot of things. How did you really bounce back from that and then segue yourself into business, into where you're at now with GSD, Growth Stack Drive?
Yeah, so in 2016, 2017, my second oldest daughter, her first day of her senior year of high school, had a seizure. She never had any problems before. She had a seizure. My wife got me up out of bed, and Sarah Beth's in the floor having a seizure. And so we take her to the hospital. Ambulance comes, gets her, takes her to the hospital. They said, Mr. and Mrs. Joslin, here's all our testing. Everything's fine. 75% of kids that have a seizure, teenagers, never have another one. So everything looks great. She's fine. Well, she can't drive for 6 months. So we get all the way to February of her senior year of high school. Hasn't had any seizures, so she starts driving. She graduates. We take her to Birmingham, to Highlands College. She gets into college, and she starts college the next February, a year and a half after she had her first seizure. She, what they thought was, fell asleep in driving her car on a Sunday morning at like 6 a.m. going to one of the campuses of the Church of the Highlands to go serve, and literally went across 6 lanes of traffic and rolled up on a little curb. So we went and picked her up. I got a call that afternoon from some college guys that were in the same college as her, that were living in the same apartment complex, and they were like, "Hey, Mr. Joslin," they said, "we saw Sarah Beth cross all those lanes and roll up on the." So we just pulled in next to her. We tapped on the window. She had her eyes open, but she wouldn't pay attention to us. That's when I realized she had another seizure. So we brought her home. This time they did a sleep deprivation workup. So she couldn't sleep all night long. Wow. And then she had the same EEG and the same EKG, all the workup that they do. And literally they showed us the results, and they said she's got juvenile epilepsy. And the seizures are brought on by sleep deprivation. And so we brought her home for a semester, and then we moved to Birmingham. So I stepped out of full-time ministry, and I went back into, that's what caused me to go back into real estate. Oh. Yeah, that's why I went back into real estate. And I moved back to Birmingham, and that was in September of 2018. And in September of 2019, just in my second year back into really doing real estate full-time as my vocation, I finished 7th out of 3,725 agents.
7th out of
3,700?
3,700.
So top half of 1%. Yeah.
Okay. All right, big dog. Okay, I see you, man. I see you.
Dude, listen, for me, it was always easy.
Yeah.
Because people trusted me. It wasn't any different than being a pastor. People trusted me. They knew I was going to do what I said I was going to do, and I was good at what I did. Mm-hmm. That was it. I underpromised and over-delivered. And my client base just grew and grew and grew and grew and grew. And just like it did in mortgages, just like it did in ministry, and we grew our church, it did the same thing when I went back into real estate.
Amazing, amazing. So from there, you're back in real estate.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're looking for mentorship.
Yeah.
You come across
Grant Cardone.
Grant Cardone.
That was October of 2019. I had made at that time, I'd made probably about 125, 130,000 in the first 10 months of the year. I was doing really well. I was umpiring college baseball. I was refereeing college basketball. But there was just something, I was like, something's off. It was like I didn't have a purpose. The only purpose I had was I loved officiating, loved umpiring. It was like, I wanted to work Division I baseball. That was like my thing. So in September of 2019, I go to the ACC SEC umpire camp in New Orleans with actually one of my friends who's on staff there. He was a former minor league and big league umpire. I knew a lot of the guys that were in the game. Mm-hmm. And I go down, and they're like, "Ken," they said, your instinct is great. Like, you would be a great Division I umpire, but dude, you got to lose weight. When you got here, you were so heavy, we didn't even think you could move. And so I came home, I stepped on the scale. It was about 308, 309, 310 pounds, something like that. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna lose 66 pounds. And I never forget, I took a picture of the scale, took a picture of myself in the mirror, my before picture, and went straight to social media and said, I'm going to lose 66 pounds. And I started my health journey. 2 weeks later, I start following Grant on social, hop on a webinar, do the webinar. From the webinar, the next week I'm in Miami at 10X boot camp. There I meet Grant. I'm working on a $3 million commercial deal for a pastor friend of mine in a church. Wow. The deal's pretty much dead. I meet Grant, become a licensee, or get ready to sign up to become a licensee with Grant. We do a Q&A. I pitch the deal that I have with Grant, $3 million deal. Appraisal came in at $2.65 million. My clients don't have the extra $375,000 to put down. It's an unlisted property. There's no agent for me to communicate. The guy's 72 years old. He's Chinese. He doesn't speak English. And I'm having to communicate with him through his 22-year-old daughter. What do I do? And Grant goes, you got to find a way to close the deal. I'm literally like, dude, like I've closed at this time 200 and 250 million in real estate. Yeah. Like I know how to close deals. I don't know how to close this one. And Grant said, Ken, you're going to have to get creative. And I said, okay. And so I all day long I'm thinking, and then all of a sudden the idea hits me. I'm going to schedule a call schedule a time to go meet with this guy and his daughter, and I'm going to negotiate a seller held second for the $375,000 that we're short on a 5-year balloon, same note rate as the bank. I fly home on Monday. I meet with him. I meet with my buyer, the church. We negotiate a seller held second. We close it on Wednesday. My commission was $78,720. I took a screenshot of my ACH deposit because I'm like, holy cow, I'm making money again. And I sent it to Grant and the team at 10X, and we hop on the mentorship call that night. It's 1,100, 1,200 people on this big Zoom call with Grant. And as soon as Grant hops in the room, he's like, where's that preacher at? He said, y'all pull that preacher. He was fired up. Y'all pull that preacher in here. Come on, preacher. Tell him what happened. So I just explained to everybody what happened. That was the first or second week in November of 2019. And from the time I met Grant to the end of 2019, I doubled my income. I went from about 130,000 to over almost 270,000 is what I made in 2019. Literally doubled my income. That was one of the big deals. Closed another big $1 million deal. I got connected with Grant, became a licensee. In that process of speaking at 10X headquarters for Grant, God goes, what you see Grant doing for entrepreneurs, because it was really money focused and it was business and revenue focused. Those were the two things. It was all about the money, all about the money, which is fine. But God said, I want you to do this for faith-based entrepreneurs. And that's when I was like, okay, let's do it. That moment, bro, wasn't any different for me then as it was when I was sitting in that Acquire the Fire workshop with Ron, learning about mission statement, core values, and BAGs. The same way God spoke to me then was the same way he spoke to me then in 2018. And you're talking about, it's 20 years later, 19 years later. But It was the same voice. You learn to recognize. It's like when a woman's pregnant, when the child comes out, the child knows its mom's voice because it's been hearing its mother's voice the entire time. It's just recognizing the voice of God. And I went, okay, God, let's do it. And people are always like, dude, how did you build the #1 faith-based entrepreneur conference and community in the world? I'm like, I just obeyed God when God spoke to me and told me this is what he wanted me to do. Well, how did you do it? I don't know. I just took action and executed and figured it out. Well, how did you get to become the #1 faith-based entrepreneur conference? We just started a conference. We started doing live events. We started doing online community. I kept going and meeting mentors and people in my life that would speak into my life. And it just morphed into, over the past 6 years, what it looks like today. And I've shared this with you guys this week. My favorite Jim Rohn quote is, speed increases focus. Listen, the more you move in the direction that you know God is calling you to or drawing you to, the more clear things are. We didn't have a mastermind. I didn't even know what a mastermind, I never even heard of a mastermind. I didn't know what it was. In June of 2021, I get invited to speak at a mastermind in Sundance, Utah, which is where I met Troy Hoffman, my good friend Kedma, where they were a part of that mastermind, and Randy Garn. Randy Garn was actually a speaker there with me. Randy's on the board with Tony Robbins. He's best friends with Dean Graziosi, New York Times best-selling author, and he's partners in a private equity firm in Salt Lake City. I met all those relationships there. And I'm sitting in this room with about 25 or 30. Troy at that time had just exited for over 100 million in his company. And I'm sitting in this room with this high performing, really high level entrepreneurs. And I'm like, holy cow, we don't have this. We need this. For my guys that are at this level, this is what we need. Because we were running a 12-week, $497, which had turned into a $97 a month. And then I went to $197 a month. And then I went to $297 a month. And then I went to $497 a month. I just kept raising it because the value was so great.
Yeah.
And then that was in June of 2021. In January of 2022, we pulled off our first Create conference.
Wow.
John Maxwell, Jesse Itzler was there, Gary Brecka was there. Gary, nobody even knew who Gary, literally outside of the tenants community, nobody even knew who Gary was.
Yeah.
So we get up on stage on the last day of the conference, and I'm pitching my first ever mastermind. I don't even remember, we call it GSD Elite or something like that was what it's called. Gary gets done, and I come up to pitch the mastermind, and Gary puts his hand on my shoulder, and he's standing to my right, and he goes, guys, whoever signs up for this mastermind, Sage and I will be a part, we will be at every event, and I will oversee your personal health journey for the next 12 months. I looked at Gary and I said, what did you say? And he goes, yeah, bro, we're with you. And I'm gonna be a part of everything that you do for the next year. Dude, we had like 15 people sign up for my very first mastermind right then. But I didn't even know what a mastermind was until June of 2021. And because I was in that room, it was the ability of God going, this is your next step.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what it was. Speed increases focus. The more you move in the direction that you know God's calling and drawing you to, the more things become clear.
Man.
Execution brings clarity. Taking action brings clarity.
I love that. You're dropping gems right now. So yeah, let's run through exactly what GSD is.
Yeah.
You talked about the origin of it, how God spoke to you very clearly to do this business conference for faith-driven entrepreneurs, to give them these frameworks. Let's really talk about the mission, the vision, the core value that you bring, and the people that you serve through Grow, Stack, and Drive.
Yeah.
And even the name, too.
So Grow, Stack, Drive, here's another thing. People are like, where did the name come from? Well, in January, February of, it's this simple. We literally said, you see all these, we have Post-it notes all over this room.
Yeah.
This is my big office room.
We're in his house right now in the office space. So.
And I have two of my people on our team. This is their office. My studio is next door. And you see all this stuff. Well, we're sitting this was like the first week in February of our second week in February, about a month before COVID hit. So I'm sitting there with my team, and I'm sitting there with 2 or 3 other people that they were kind of marketing guys. And so they're like, what do you want to do? I said, we're going to do a conference in Atlanta, May the 19th, I believe it was 19th and 20th of 2020. John Maxwell, John had told me he would come. My good friend David Pollock, who was on College Game Day, one of the top college football players in the history of college football. So I'm going to bring all these guys in and we're going to do a conference. I knew conferences because I did that in my own National Youth Leadership Conference before. So we're sitting there, everybody had their own Post-it note. And I said, and one of the guys was leading Nate, my buddy who worked for John Maxwell forever, one of the greatest ideators I've ever been around in my life, probably the greatest. And Nate goes, I want everybody to write down some of your favorite adjectives on paper. Mm-hmm. So there's like 6 of us, everybody wrote like 10 or 12 adjectives. And then he went through and he goes, okay, I want you to circle your top 1 or 2. So everybody circled their top 1 or 2. And so I'm looking at all these 6 Post-it notes. And the 3 words we picked was grow, stack, and drive. So Grow, Stack, Drive was going to be the name of our conference in May. Well, 4 weeks later, COVID hits and shuts America down. Well, there's no conference now.
Yeah.
What are we going to do?
Yeah.
So I did exactly what I saw Grant do. I said, okay, we're going to start a mentorship. We're going to do it online. We're going to call it Grow, Stack, Drive. It's $397 for 12 weeks. We had over 30 people sign up. And then from there, it just continued to grow. I continue to get around great mentors.
Yeah.
One of the quotes I have in my planner that I created is get in rooms with people who think bigger than you do. And when you get in those rooms, what it does is it unlocks something in you. It literally raises your belief lid. John Maxwell calls it the law of the lid, and it's the first law of the 21 laws of leadership. Wherever I'm at in my life, if I'm a 6 or 7 in leadership, I'm never going to attract 7, 8s, and 9s. They're going to be 4s and 5s and maybe 6s. And the same way works with vision. When you get in a room of massive visionaries who think that big, you know what God's going to do? He's raising your belief lid to be able to believe at a different level.
100%.
Yeah.
Like just the horizons that you see in your mind. Like it just, the more you go into these rooms where bigger thinkers, the more that you're going to adapt, the more that these blinders are going to be, off, and you'll be expanded.
It becomes possible.
Yeah.
Because you're in the
Your
room and you're
belief
going,
increases.
holy cow. If this guy can do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
I'll never forget the year after I walk into that leadership session with Ron, and he teaches mission statement, core values, and BHAGs. The next year I walk into the same leadership session, and I'm the first one there. Ron standing in front of the room. I walked up to him and said, hey, Ron, I know you don't know who I am. My name's Ken Joslin. I was in this room a year ago this week. Let me tell you what's happened in my youth ministry since then. And he was blown away. And he goes, Ken, if I gave you 10 or 15 minutes at the end of this session, would you share that in the room? And I said, of course I would. So at the very end of that 2-hour workshop, or 90-minute workshop, he gives me 10 minutes, and I'm standing in front of 700, 800 youth pastors, youth leaders, and senior pastors, and I'm sharing my story about what happened the previous 12 months. Well, the next year I come in, obviously Ron has me share every time I can be at Acquire the Fire what's happened in my youth ministry. A young guy comes up and he goes, Ken, I was in the room last year when you shared your story. And I said, God, if you can do it in him, you can do it in me. And here's what's happened in my life over the past 12 months. And I was like, okay, so you want to know why I do what I do? That's why I do what I do. Just literally sharing vision can unlock. Like you're listening to podcasts, like getting around mentors, and you don't have to have a personal relationship with these guys. I mean, I can pick the phone up and I can call John. I can pick the phone up and I call Gary. I did it the other night when you were here.
Yeah.
Call Gary Brackett. Hey, bro, hey, what about this? Okay, great. Like you may not even be able to pick the phone up, but you know what you can do? You can pick a podcast up. You can devote time on your calendar to developing you. You have to sharpen you. And again, just like I'll lean into John's first law in the 21 laws of leadership, the law of the lid. As you become a greater leader and a better leader, you attract what? You attract better leaders and better people into your life.
Man, amazing. Crazy testimony.
This is something God gave me a couple years ago. He said, Ken, these are really the 5 areas. Faith is the number one thing. Health and relationships, because I've been on this massive health journey for 5.5 years. I've lost right at 100 pounds of body fat. You guys have got to come in the gym and watch me actually lift weights.
That boy,
while you're grabbing,
that boy can lift some weights.
While you're grabbing the little purple ones.
Yeah. I told him, I'm leaning out, all right?
I love it, dude. I love it. But I've been on this journey. So faith, health, relationships, business, and finances. Those are our core 5. That's our core 5 framework. And guys, faith, health, and relationships are the 3 most important. And when you get those 3 areas in alignment, what it does is you create a foundation for God to then be able to build the business that He desires to build in your life, so that then you can steward the resources that come from that business.
Huge.
Yeah, it's massive. So, dude, we're going to have an amazing time. We've got Gary Brecka coming back. My good friend Eddie Wilson from Aspire, the largest business tour. Eddie's going to be with us.
Huge.
My good friend Jake Hamilton's coming in to lead worship the entire weekend. Who else have I got coming? Horst Schulze, the co-founder and former CEO of the Ritz-Carlton.
The Ritz.
I mean, dude,
Carlton.
he is
hold
he's
on.
Unbelievable.
This guy is one of the most connected people that I know. The relationships that he has with these world-class change makers is just absolutely out of this world. I want you to speak a little bit about how you've been able to cultivate these relationships, because this is not something that's ordinary. People don't get proximity to the level of people that you bring on your stage.
Yeah, 2022, we finished our first Create conference. We had 155, 160 people there that year. It was our very first one. I took a massive step. And guys, listen, entrepreneurship, I'll never forget at that conference, I stepped up on my stage and John Maxwell just finished. Like, John's my hero. David Pollack from College Game Day just walked off my stage. And I got up, my first talk in front of those 155 people was this. You see the lights, you see the band, it just looks sexy. It looks amazing. But what you didn't see was me laying in my bed, waking up in the middle of the night 2 weeks ago, wondering, do I have what it takes to pull this thing off? I had about 17 grand in my bank account, and that wouldn't cover the expenses that I had for the event. And I'm like, God, I think you got the wrong guy. So anytime you try to do something, guys, if there's one thing you hear out of this entire podcast or this moment, is anything that you try to do that God is asking you to do, if you're trying to do it and it's something you can do in your own power, it's not God's vision. Like, you've got to look at it. And I tell my team this all the time. If you don't look in the mirror every 30 to 60 days and go, God, there's no way I can do what you've called me to do. God, you got the wrong guy. God, you better find somebody else, because I don't know if I've got what it takes to be able to pull this off. If you don't have that, like, feeling like you're out over your skis, if you will, I dare say that the vision you have on the inside of you is not a vision that God has. So we finished 2022. I'm investing all this money. We do really well. I'm in the shower Sunday morning, and I'm just taking a shower, and I'm just got some worship music playing, and the water's running, and I am bawling. I'm crying, so just out of gratitude, like, God, you are so good. And God said, I want you to focus, and I want you to be intentional in your relationships. So that was the first year. 2022 was the first year I had a word or a mantra for the year, and that was intentionality. And so I called the four top relationships that I had that year. Gary Brecka was one, Brent Gove, the number one guy at EXP, Brian Covey, Senior Vice President for, at that time, Revolution Mortgage, and then Randy Garn. I called those four guys individually, and I said, guys, I'd love to take my life in this next year, and I'd love to devote into deepening and strengthening our relationship. And here's what I'm willing to invest. I'm willing to invest my time, my talent, and my treasure into our relationship. My time, I'm going to come see you. Like, I'm not asking you to come to me. I'm not asking you to give me out of your time, because every one of us are entrepreneurs. We're all busy. We all have things. We're chasing what God's put in our heart. I'm going to come to you. So, dude, I've been to Vegas with Gary. I've been to Miami with Gary. I've been to Nashville with Brian. I've been to Salt Lake City with Randy probably 10 times. Brent and Kathy Go live in Puerto Rico. I've been down there several times just to go hang out. I don't want anything, don't need anything. I just want to invest in that relationship. Treasure, when my friends are doing events, guys, this is super important, because I get this all the time. When my friends do events, I never ask for a discount. I go straight to their website, and whatever their most expensive ticket is that I can afford, and even if it's a stretch, I buy those tickets. When Brent's doing his build conferences, Tony Robbins, Dean Graziosi, Gary Brecka, which he met all those guys through me. When I go in, I don't say, hey, you met all these guys through me, you need to give me a front row seat. I go in, I paid $3 or $4 grand for his front row seat. When Gary Brecka, the first year Gary spoke at GrowthCon after COVID, I'm on a call with Gary and some other doctors that I introduced him to. And we're getting close to being done, and Gary's like, dude, man, Grant gave me 90 minutes at GrowthCon this year. I'm like, that's awesome, dude. Gary was so fired up. He literally was like a kid at Christmas. He was so fired up, and he's talking and talking, and he's, Gary's all energy. And he goes, dude, are you gonna be there? I said, dude, I wouldn't miss it for the world. What day is it? I think it was April the 16th. And I was like, dude, I wouldn't miss it for the world. In the back of my mind, I'm going, no, it can't be April 16th. So I get done. I look at this Ticketmaster. I had just bought front row seats to go see Eric Church in Birmingham. They cost me $2 grand, $1,000 a piece. Front row, right in front of Eric Church, one of my favorite artists. What date was it? April the 16th. So I had to sell those 2 tickets. I took about a $600 loss on that. I called Jim Morales, actually text Jim, who was Grant's CFO, and I said, Jimmy, hey, I think I've got $10,000 on my account. I need a diamond seat for GrowthCon this year. And he goes, done. Send me my ticket. I'm sitting on the second row. So on the video, and you watch Gary coming out of the chute, and he's walking down that long hall, that long kind of corridor in between the seats, probably 4,000 people at that one. He sees me, and he comes and makes a beeline to me and high fives me and hugs my neck, and then goes up on stage and crushes it. Time, talent, treasure. So talent's number 2. I went to treasure.
Yep.
Talent's number 2. Who do I know that you need to know? What relationship do I have that can help you fulfill what God's called you to fulfill? Those are the 3 things. That's a framework: time, talent, treasure. That if you invest those 3 things in there, and really my mantra that I live my life by is great leaders want something for people, not from people.
Amen.
And if you live your life where I want something for you, not from you, dude, people want to be around you. And it's my favorite Zig Ziglar quote. If you help enough people get what they want, eventually you'll get what you want.
Yeah.
And that's how I live my life, man.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that, man. Well, I know we're a little pressed on time right now. Mr. Jay's over there. But
Jay's like, I got to drive to Miami
yeah,
tonight, bro.
I got to drive to Miami. But listen, man, so it's just a pleasure. It's a pleasure to getting to know you on a personal level.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to build a friendship with you. It's a pleasure to build a business relationship with you. And I'm super grateful for you sharing your story. I think that there's a lot of things that people can take away from what you've been able to do and the impact that you're currently having today with the largest faith-based entrepreneur conference in the world.
Yeah.
You have done amazing things.
Yeah.
I give you my flowers, and I'm just super grateful that God has connected us.
Man.
I can't wait to see what He continues
Yeah.
to do and what we continue to do together. And I know this is just the start to something great and amazing. So, guys, if you want to follow Ken, how can they get to you?
At Ken Joslin on Instagram, KenJoslin. DM me. I'm the only one that manages my DMs. My team sees them, but I'm the one that contacts you back. I'm the one that texts and does all that stuff. And I want to say this. Let me give a quick shout out for these guys. Listen, if you're in the business, I have been struggling to find someone to tell our story. Like, how do I take and share what happens at Create? How do I share the transformation that the men and women in our community circle corner are experiencing? Until I found these guys. If you are an entrepreneur and you're saying, man, I need to tell my story, because these guys, they think differently than I do. They're literally up at night processing through, looking at what we're doing. We've been together 4 days now.
I don't know.
I mean, literally.
I lost track of time, man.
Literally 4 days. We've been shooting it's 7 o'clock on New Year's Day.
Yep.
We've been shooting literally from 7 or 8 in the morning until about 10 or 11 o'clock. Last night we got home at 3 a.m.
Yep.
We've been shooting for 4 straight days. If you need a team and a group of people to be able to stand alongside you, to be able to tell your story for your business, whatever you do, these are the guys. And I'm telling you, if you have the opportunity to hire them to help you, you need to do it. I would do it in a split second again.
My dog, I love you. I appreciate you. Well, there you guys have it. The largest faith-based entrepreneur community in the world, with the largest conference where you're going to be able to achieve vision, clarity, and be able to network with some of the largest, greatest, impactful entrepreneurs that have ever walked the planet, including this man right here. So there isn't a better place where you can come into alignment with God's purpose and be in community and tribe with people that get you, that understand you, and that are on that same path as you. So anybody that I know, you got to come to this event, because if you know me, I'm all about the purpose. I'm all about God's mission. And this is by far the greatest event that we've been able to be a part of. We've done masterminds all over the world. You know, some of the clients that we've worked with, and your event is going to be the biggest and most impactful, and it already has been. So I look forward to it, and I look forward to you guys to continue to build a relationship with Ken, and we'll see you guys in the next one.